I'll get things started, guys. Welcome, everyone. My name's Craig Hill, co-founder of Australian Sports Technologies Network. We're the peak body for the sports technology industry in Australia. For those that aren't aware of us, we're a member-based organisation. We provide a leadership role in the development, promotion and advocacy of the sports technology industry in Australia, both domestically and internationally. The industry here in Australia consists of more than 900 companies, produces a revenue of about $7 billion per annum, and about 20,000 people are employed in the sector. So it's a significant sector as a part of a sports technology sector, a sports sector that's worth about $45 billion in total. So welcome. Thank you to my colleague here, Martin Schlegel, who will be presenting to us as well. Guys, feel free at any stage over the next hour to grab a drink. If you want to grab something to eat, jump out. We want to keep this casual and as friendly as possible. So if you're thirsty or hungry, go and grab something. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. Also like to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and contribution that they make to the lives of the city and the region. Before we get into the formalities of this evening, I'd like to thank Mesh Points. We've got Brittany here that I'll get up on stage soon. Mesh Points has been our main funding partner to enable the ASTN to deliver its activities and programs and events through this financial year. So thank you to all the team at Mesh Points. We've got Brittany, Nate, Ophelia, Ches, Brody, that do a wonderful job in activating the technology and startup innovation ecosystem in WA, so thank you. Also, big thank you to Sophia Nymphius. Thank you for hosting us. Amazing venue, like probably the best venue that ASTN's had an event in 14 years. So, so thank you very much. Magnificent view, and thank you for the tour, both Andrew and yourself. Multi-talented this evening, great tour hosts, and also we look forward to you both being on the panel this evening. Also like to acknowledge our couple of our past funders. The WA government's been very supportive of us in really kicking things off in Perth. The ASTN's been in operation for 14 years to support the industry. We'd done nothing in Perth until 2023, and we've been able to support about 32 sports technology startups in Perth through our programs over that period of time, and engaged with about 500 stakeholders in the industry across about 17 events and masterclasses. So without the support of these stakeholders, nothing would happen in developing and supporting this community. I'd also like to thank our members. We have 200 members across Australia, and some of our premium members here, we've got about 30 odd premium members, and some of the members are organisations that are in our current programs here in Perth. So just to let you know what we're doing in the next hour, we'll have Brittany come up and talk a little bit about Mesh Points. Martin will do a 15-minute presentation on the future of impacts of AI in sport, really as a precursor to the panel that we'll have, actually 5 panel members this evening. And I'm sure you've got a lot of questions for them, so I'll keep my Q&A short and we'll throw to you guys the questions that you have. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Brittany Victor. Brittany is the Program Manager of Mesh Points, and she'll share the really important role that Mesh Points plays in activating the sport, the broader innovation ecosystem here in Perth. So thank you, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Craig. How do I do this? Like this? What's the sitch? Okay. I feel like it's an extremely cold day. I'm from Malaysia, and so I'm really struggling today. And so it's going to be a little bit hard for me to speak as well. So excuse me. But also, good evening, everyone. There's a lot of you that I haven't come across yet. And so it's really exciting to meet new faces. I'm happy to catch up with everyone as well. I did want to come here today to also speak a little bit more about Mesh Points and what we do. We're definitely very honored to be the funding partner tonight as well. So Mesh Points is a WA-wide initiative funded by Lottery West, and so it's delivered by Space Cube, which is just along the terrace. 45 St. George's Terrace is where our base is at. Our goal is to help build a stronger, more connected, innovative ecosystem here in WA. And so I tend to work on both sides of the ecosystem. So I work for Plus8, which is our accelerator program, and I also work for Mesh Points. And one of the biggest things that we're constantly seeing is that people, founders and organizations alike, they're both asking for where is the support. They don't seem to see where the support is, where the funding is, and they don't necessarily know where those pieces come in unless they come to a space like Space Cube or they land in ECU and have a conversation with Maya, for example. And that's where they would probably understand where the support is. But really, there are so many great programs, communities, funding, and opportunities out there already, but people either don't know they exist or they're just overwhelmed with information when they do eventually land in one of these places. So with that, we came up, and I'm very excited to talk about the WA Innovation Ecosystem Navigator, which is something that we've been working on for quite some time, but we're really trying to make sure that people are aware that this is a resource that is out there. So if you haven't seen this before, I really want to encourage you to scan this QR code and make sure that you have a play around with it. The Navigator fully maps out the entirety as best as we can, the ecosystem here in WA. So it helps connect people with different kinds of support that's already available to them. So we're trying not to create more ecosystem, but really showcasing what is already out there. So whether you're a founder in this room, a researcher, or a different organization, this is where you can probably find what is out there and maybe find where you also fit in, because the support is very much there and it is very much available. We currently actually have, and we are working with over 200 different partner organizations at the moment, and this is WA-wide. We try our best to bring our people together, making sure that we're sharing ideas, sharing the challenges, and having the people in the room to actually work on these challenges. We run our initiatives like our Mesh Points Town Hall, our annual Congress, which is actually happening on the 23rd of July, so coming up very, very soon. And we try to bring these people together to create working groups of people that you don't necessarily see in a room together. So governments, private funders, founders, making sure that all of the voices are heard, and that's what's playing a factor in the initiatives that we're trying to roll out. So if you are in the room and you're part of an organization and you're really passionate about supporting innovation and entrepreneurship, I'd love to meet with you today and also see if we can connect. If you scan this, it'll bring you to our partner network. Fill in a few details there, and then I'll get back to you and we can see how else I can support you and see where else you would fit in within the ecosystem navigator that I showed you guys earlier as well. And I also want to say thank you to Craig and Martin for everything.
Thanks, Brittany, and thank you again to Mesh Points. I'd now like to introduce the ASTN Executive Chair, Dr. Martin Schlegel. This topic of AI is proliferating the entire world, and sport is no different in it being impacted in our day-to-day lives, including sport. It's amazing, it's disruptive, and it's controversial. So in this session, Martin will explore how AI will affect sport from high performance to management of operations in clubs to personalised fan engagement. And of particular interest, the Australian Sports Commission recently launched some guidelines and a roadmap, which is a world first in sport, in trying to enable the sports industry to harness the power of AI in a responsible manner. So in this session for 15 minutes, as a precursor to our panel, Martin will consider the opportunities and the considerations that we need to take in the future as sports executives and as sports startups in deploying such AI tools. So thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Craig, and good evening, everyone. This is part of the work that we've been delivering. Thank you to Mesh Points together with Sport West. and looking at how technology can be deployed in a way that it actually optimizes workflows and helps with limited resources. But as Craig was pointing out, Australia actually has a long history, and I'm actually not going to talk about high performance in particular, because if those of you who know have heard of Stuart Morgan at the AIS when he was still working there for swimming, for field hockey, these were the early days of where he used technology to actually get actionable insights out of video imaging, out of data sets, and so on and so forth. And I'm gonna focus on a couple other things that are rapidly developing, particularly in the business of sport. And so we've all seen this where we use image recognition to detect poses, and obviously in high performance sport that's done, but it's also done to look at posture and skill execution. But there are a couple of things right now that are used in the business of sport. And as we are looking at the FIFA World Cup in the early hours of the day, you probably have heard that these image recognition algorithms can actually detect objects. And we're using that in the business of sport to measure certain things of how many things actually come up on screen, to give sort of like media measurement a quantifiable lens to it. We also can then assign labels to a certain active or pixel on the image, and we can then detect certain branding. So from a measurement perspective, how many times is a brand actually appearing in a frame? All of this can now be measured, and then obviously text identification. So these are things that are actually happening now. You all have probably experimented with many of the tools that are out there. So from a natural language processing point of view, I don't need to go into those. And you probably have also experimented with certain generative AI tools. And one of the things that we explored yesterday with at Sport West, with Football West, was actually using code creation tools that can then be deployed to automate workflows. And so we're getting to the point, with the help of AI, that some of the things that were requiring, let's say, deep knowledge of coding can now actually be done in a way that they then can be reviewed and deployed, but in a much faster way. So these are the kind of things from text, images, audio, and video, and what we do sort of like casually putting ourselves out there as the 90-year-old or the hero of that or whatever you want to create actually has some real applications in generating output that we then can use in our workflow processes. And the same sport is also trying to experiment with from a agentic AI perspective. So where we actually look at processes, we let the AI algorithm observe the flow of that, which then gives us recommendations based on these observations, how to act or how to make certain decisions. And if you think about, we probably could deploy an AI agent that helps grassroots sports direct volunteers to a job that they previously haven't actually performed. So again, in an industry where we have limited resources, and Football West showed us that yesterday, where the question was, do I employ 2 more people? Well, hang on, I don't actually have the budget for that, so how can I actually make that happen in different ways? And then there's physical AI, which combines all of those sensors, devices, and then the compute with certain activities. And if you have experienced one of these nice SUVs in North America, you probably have seen where that currently sits. And I always ask the question of, are you comfortable getting into an autonomous car? If the answer is no, you're probably not going to have an automated surgeon perform an operation on you. So this is probably the impact of what we're talking about. And as Craig mentioned, I think one advantage that we probably should take on board is that the CSIRO has done a lot of work on defining what responsible deployment of AI means. And they've looked obviously at human-centered values, the social and environmental well-being, the fairness, like are there biases in the suggestions or in the outputs that are created, privacy protection, transparency, the question of explainability, and then therefore contesting what the output is, and effectively who is accountable for that. And so for sporting organizations, the Sports Commission has actually put out this guide for responsible AI in sport. And there's a couple of really good do's and don'ts in there. And particularly if you think about that in junior sport, we are dealing with minors. We are dealing with questions around child safety, so privacy, cybersecurity, and the way we go and make decisions, and where is the human interaction actually required, and where is the algorithm supporting maybe certain decisions. These are all questions that have been addressed. But from my perspective, one of the fastest growing segments is actually in the content creation and in the business of sport. And we were fortunate enough to do multiple tours recently through NextDC's data center facilities in Melbourne and Brisbane. And one of the trends that we see emerging is we think sometimes of AI as that thing that we interact with on the computer, but it requires actually an enormous infrastructure. So a data center, and they are ranked in numbers of megawatts they actually consume. They're consuming as much as a shopping center in terms of energy or electricity. And but they are required to provide all of that compute power. And one of the things that's interesting that I learned was it's not only the data center that's in your city that you connect to, it's also the interconnectivity to all of the other places around the world. And from that perspective, there's a couple here in Perth. We're obviously connected to KL, Singapore, in Queensland, the Sunshine Coast with their subwater cable through Guam into Tokyo, and then into the West Coast on the US continent. These infrastructures are very, very important. But what we see is this, what's now described as hybrid cloud. And it's effectively that in the data center, you combine all of these different cloud providers inside the data center, and you don't have to go out of the data center into another data center to connect to a different service. You do that all in the four walls of that particular data center. And NextDC has a technology that actually links that and reduces the latency significantly. And where this has been deployed, and this is one of the companies of an ASTN member company, Layer Cake, a group of founders that used to work for Channel 10 and were used to how broadcasting is a very capital-intensive industry. Cameras, broadcasting trucks, all of that infrastructure. And about, I would say, 6-7 years ago, these guys identified that all of that will be transferred into the cloud. So they now can ingest signals from all different sources. The computation all occurs in the cloud. They then combine different AI providers and do that all within that data center. What that allows to do is effectively reduce the price of broadcast production by a factor of 6 to 7 roughly. It also lowers the bar in terms of what skill sets are required, because you basically point and click and build these things, and from there you can distribute globally through OTT platforms. The other aspect that is interesting, because it's within the walls of a physical data center, that connectivity, it can be really securely fenced in. So when you think about, and Layer Cake in this instance had worked with public schools in Queensland, and when they wanted to broadcast or stream junior athletics events or swimming events or rugby events, they were only made available to the people within who had the access rights. Yeah. So now I think that is a development. If we think about the value that content has and the demand, particularly on short form content, every sporting organization becomes a content creator in that space. But they are not all broadcast experts. And so some of these tools that now are available lower that bar and help to do that. Now, closing the loop to the responsible AI, one of the things, and apologies that it's a little bit blurry, but we'll blame that on the wine rather than my slide, so it's all good. Think about the responsible AI and the quality framework which we as an industry body like to introduce into all of our startups. Basically talks about quality assurance. Does does the product or service deliver what you say it does? Where are the benefits? What are the security and ethical frameworks that you operate under? How's the user experience, and how do you manage data? From our point of view, there's no longer a world where someone can say, I can do it all and I'm a one-stop shop. In our world, it's all interconnected and it's all brought together, and we're deriving the insights and the knowledge, and that gives us actually the competitive advantage, and not the fact that we sit on a mountain of data. So this sports tech quality framework was originally developed from researchers out of Australia, out of Europe, that were driving that. And we are trying to embed that now into every aspect of our founders' education. So check that out. It's available at the Sports Technology Research Network's website, strn.co. or we also have it available on our website. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'd like to welcome a few more experts to the floor. Who would like to come up? Now, we've added a special guest at the 11th hour this afternoon. So Glenn Morton wasn't on the initial panel list, but we welcome Glenn to the panel too. So from my right, we've got Dr. Andrew Best. You're our most regular attendee of our... so Alex, I played football with Andrew Best, not Alex Best. Alex, I think you've been our most regular attendee of all of our events over the last 3 years, so congratulations on that one.
Thank you, I'll try.
We've also got Joel Steele. Joel is CEO and co-founder of Como. Martin's joining us. Glenn's come along as well. Glenn is CTO of and co-founder of Como. And we've also got Professor Sophia Nymphius, who is the Pro Vice Chancellor of Sport at ECU. So thank you for joining us this evening. And we'll open the floor quite quickly for questions. Now, I might start with you, Glenn. You're at the coalface of of AI and fan and member engagement. How is Como using AI to improve the personalisation of fan engagement?
Yeah. Hi everyone. So Como has gone all in on AI probably about a year ago. That was kind of when we really kind of drank the Kool-Aid and went all in on it. And I think since December things have rapidly accelerated from there. In Como, we're a software platform for anyone who's not aware, focusing on engagement, so fan engagement, customer engagement, anything in that space. We utilise AI from our customer perspective in order to be able to create more moments to engage. So the AI actually helps our customers generate content that they can use during, whether it's at a sporting match, whether it's pre-game, post-game, anywhere in between. The key point there is using AI to rapidly accelerate the rate at which you can produce more content. And for every piece of content you put out there, obviously that's another opportunity to connect with the customer or an end user in this case. It's an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that end user and collect that data and then help enrich the profile of that end user so that you can then feed that back through the cycle.
And so what are the sort of key outcome changes that you've seen over the last, say, 12, 24 months with the evolution of AI and personalisation?
So Kai is the name of our AI product AI tool within the product. We've since rolling it out, we've seen roughly a 70% uptake in terms of customers actually using AI to produce the content versus the old school way of going in there, thinking about the content, producing the content, and content can be anything. Can be imagery, can be it could be a competition, could be a poll, quiz, EDM, anything in between. So yeah, we're seeing massive uptake in terms of utilisation in AI. It's saving a dramatic amount of time for our customers.
Yeah, cool. And probably to you, Joel, as looking after the business itself, how are you using AI to improve efficiencies and workflows and just general performance of the business beyond just the customer and itself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. Look, there's many different ways that we do utilise AI within Como. Like Glenn said, it was a year or so ago that we had to really get sort of this mental shift within the organisation, actually, because there was a lot of people, the engineers probably the hardest to actually get across the line to start drinking that Kool-Aid. So we were, I guess, just to take a step back from the question quickly, is how do you actually get the team on board to want to start utilising AI? We had to run what we called I think we called it a book club on a Friday afternoon, put some beers on, started talking and experimenting and brainstorming different ideas that the team could use. Everyone had to sort of bring a project to the book club and really start to bring them along on the journey, as opposed to just shoving it down their throat, saying you had to start using these tools. Slowly but surely, it, just like AI, they sort of came on board, and now, as Glenn said, we're going full steam ahead. I double-checked this with Glenn before we came on. It's roughly 90% of all the code generated in the Como platform is generated initially with AI. Obviously, human in the loop is a big part of all that, which I'm sure will come up a few times tonight. But then we've just got some amazing tools that we use. I don't know if anyone uses a tool called Granola. It's a note taker. It's probably the best tool I've ever used, apart from ours. But what you can do with something like a Granola, which we pay a subscription for, obviously it takes your notes, but then it sort of, you can then, chat to Granola and you can spit out action items and all that sort of stuff. But what we've since done, and this is not me, and Glenn can probably talk to this a little bit better, is we take the notes from, say, a discovery conversation on a sales pitch using Granola, instantly generate an output which we can then feed into a web-based proposal platform that Glenn and the team have built ourselves, and then within 3 minutes we have a fully fledged multi-page website, which is a new and unique way that we can send a proposal for a sales pitch outside of just a standard deck, which is it's proving to be huge time saver. It's helping us stand out from the crowd, and it's all literally done from a discovery session that you're already having, and 10 minutes later you've got this fully fledged website built out. So like, I can't take any credit for any of that, but there's all these little things, and there's many more. Glenn, you just built we're in the Series A fundraising round at the moment. Glenn built a data room for us to use instead of paying Ansarada or something else $5,000 a month. He built it in a couple of days, and probably not spending 16 hours on it, more just having the agents work in the background on actually building the site itself. You said something to me this morning. I'm like, how's this other thing you're working on? It's like, yeah, well, when I went to sleep, it was working on it overnight. So it's, these types of things are working while he's sleeping, and
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. Martin and Soph, you're both big soccer fans. Where are we going with AI and automation of refereeing? Soph, you can
Convenient
start.
example. I don't know anybody watching the World Cup, but obviously there was a fascinating little event between Switzerland and Qatar. Did anybody see that? There was an uproar, so they gave the penalty to Switzerland, and they were expecting a VAR review with our new tech.
Yeah.
And everyone was quite confused because nothing was coming up on the screen, and, well, you didn't need VAR to see how offside Switzerland was, but they took the penalty and, converted, as they say. And so the query was what happened, because they have better than ever tech, FIFA does, on their VAR. The accuracy is better than we've ever seen it, but they had a malfunction in the moment, and they couldn't capture that VAR, so they were not able to review it. It's just really interesting what happens. It's fantastic when it works, but it has been an interesting discussion, but not as much uproar as I thought there would be from that, because there is something expected about bad calls, and it's what makes the game really interesting. I mean, it would be really boring if everything were predictable, and actually the mistakes we make is a valuable part of the experience and what everybody's ironically talking about. So I think it's twofold with that. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. So the other thing is, if you've watched the FIFA World Cup right now, they actually produce the referee's view. If you look, the referee is wearing a headset and there's a little camera. Now that image that's produced is actually sanitized using an AI, because with the head movement and the body movement, it would be otherwise way too shaky. And so I'm not sure about the entire percentage, but I think 60% of that broadcast actually needs to be stabilized so that you don't get sick at home watching the referee's view. So that's another example, I think, where it's used to enhance what's there.
Yeah, and probably the other sport that was early adopters really of this was the assessment of umpires in Major League Baseball. So umpires in Major League Baseball, their performance review is done essentially through AI and their accuracy. Now they don't overturn that. They're shifting some rules around whether they can make a call for review, a little bit like a VAR. But initially they were assessing to make sure that, particularly behind the plate, umpires reach a certain level of accuracy. But they're not taking away the umpire, the person making the call. It's more like a performance review and actually a talent assessment for umpires that are coming through. And so, yeah, I think it's a really great balance. It's not either or. And I think we'll probably talk about it a little later. As much as AI is coming in and disrupting and giving us these other things, I think it's making us reevaluate what we really love about sport, particularly, and its humanness, which is probably why the valuation of every sports club is taking off.
Really interesting, yeah. Thank you for that. This one's for Alex and Martin. How are sports clubs, leagues and associations able to use AI to either improve efficiency of their clubs and or improve the fan or member engagement? Start with you, Alex, on that one.
Hi everyone, good to see you. It's a good question. I think I've got a bit of a weird insight to this one. I recently got my PhD finished, and in doing that I was looking at tech adoption in not-for-profit and local sport, and what you'd think is, you know, we're all doing things on shoestring budgets and trying to get everything to work, but the level of tech that's even coming in at that lower level is actually much higher than most people would think to realise. So you even look in terms of, I think most local sport now, and I think Football West is a good one with that, video cameras are popping up everywhere. From that's coming out, there's a lot of AI especially that's coming into putting broadcast packages together. So certainly it's at the top levels. FIFA as well, they're doing that at the moment. So that's how everyone's been talking about how great SBS coverage is at the moment, right? Or is it just me thinking it's great? But the speed of those highlights packages coming out is because you've got AI going through and logging those moments in the game. So if there's a red card, if there's a goal, if there's a contentious VAR call that we don't get right, you can find where that's time-stamped and then get a package together. So those sorts of things are those extra efficiencies, but sort of even going back to the standard stuff in, you know, the office. So we heard Martin, you were starting to talk about, you know, AI is coming in and everyone's probably playing around with it. I think that's definitely the case. I think it's in terms of how systematic maybe the use is where we've still got a bit of scope to grow and get everything across an organisation working together, and that's where those agentic AI and everything like that will probably eventually come around. But I think there's a lot of tech being used in isolation where, you know, be it in broadcast, be it in high performance sport, because that's coming through as well, strength and conditioning, coaching. Look, even with F1, so anyone big F1 fans here, and you always see the sort of overtake insights, right? That's AWS, so that's absolutely AI led, that they're trying to get all of those data points together just to tell you in a second that Verstappen's about to be overtaken out of a pit stop. So, you know, that doesn't just come from nowhere, that comes from all of the data behind it, run through AI, run through algorithms for them to still say, well, maybe he'll get caught, and then turns out Verstappen will just be Verstappen and won't get caught anyway. So that's where the unpredictability...
Not this season.
No, well, yeah, maybe it's more Antonelli, I guess, but I mean, that's the thing, it still keeps it fresh and still keeps it interesting, but, you know, getting those insights and making the sport maybe easier to watch at times.
And the storytelling, I think.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
To keep you engaged, because the races have become sometimes a bit of a procession, and you switch off and then suddenly you see a round of pit stops are coming up, so maybe something's going to happen.
What probably surprised me is how willing even grassroots sport is to experiment, and the most, let's say, forward-thinking managers or boards will actually set the guardrails and then allow staff to experiment within that. And I mean, you'd be surprised. We saw a particular in optimization of schedules where people actually use tools from other industries to optimize competition schedules, to minimize people having to travel long distances, multiple weekends in a row, by just putting the constraints in of saying, oh, but we don't want these teams to have to travel weekend after weekend, and put that in as a constraint, and then let the algorithm make the first suggestion. And that generally replaces the workload for one person having to do this over a week or 2 weeks even, and then eliminating the iterations of getting it right for every person that's complaining.
So one example as well, if you don't mind. So going from grassroots to the NBA, so one of our discussions we've been having with the NBA, and one of their ambitions is to be able to instantly and automatically put up a piece of content, like a competition or a poll, at the back end of every single NBA game. So there's 1,200 and something. There's a crap load of NBA games a season, and there's no way that they have the resources internally to go at the end of every single game. Let's put up a poll that's going to be highly engaging, that we can do what they want to do, which is collect data. It's another sponsorable asset that they can put out there, all of those types of things. But to make it highly relevant and less resource heavy, AI is going to have to play that role. So they want to be able to ingest data from social media, from the statistics from the game, be able to generate content on the fly using a platform like the Como platform to then automatically push out an opinion poll on who was the best player of the game, or what do you think of this particular moment, depending on what the reasoning layer of the AI actually said. So it's allowing organisations as big as the NBA to actually do things that they couldn't necessarily do before due to resource constraints, which will then drive, there's data opportunity there. There is obviously engagement, which generates the data, and then commercial opportunities off the back of it as well, due to the content and how engaging that is.
Very good, thank you. Very generic question to all of you, and I'll get you, Soph, to start with this one. What are the key ethical issues that are facing sport in the adoption of AI?
Probably the same thing that is our ethical issue already, is we barely trust people, and people are the underpinning of the data that creates most of AI's content. So it's the ethical issue is actually no different than the ethical issues that we have. It's just harder to place blame when we're upset by a breach of our ethical standards, right? And so then I think our biggest challenge is how we hold accountability. So there is someone at the end of that chain that maybe had nothing to do with it, but we want accountability. It's a little bit like why some people don't want to get in a driverless car. There's something about, it's actually about you being accountable, or someone being accountable for, not if something goes well, it's always if something goes bad. So,
any other responses to the question of ethics in sport?
Yeah, maybe back to the World Cup. I don't know if anyone saw, Google came out with a model that had the ability to predict 8 seconds ahead of a play in the game what was going to happen, with a very high degree of probability that was actually the case. Where things start to go, obviously betting's starting to really get it kicked off in America. There's a lot of challenges around where things kind of go in the future as a consequence. Like the rate at which these models are getting more intelligent, it's an exponential curve, and then you've got the chips also on an exponential curve. So you're stacking an exponential curve on an exponential curve, which is basically a line straight up in terms of intelligence. It's going to be a really challenging couple of years just to try and hold on.
So you're talking about like the sport radars and the Genius Sports that are sort of controlling the commercialisation of
all
sports
of that,
data.
The teams, like obviously if I'm a
top of
team
the
and I've
game.
got a predictive model and I kind of can already see what's going to happen, like where does that become, the actual players playing the game and versus an AI controlling the game? Do you need coaches at that point?
Well, we were actually talking about this before when we were thinking about sort of responses to certain questions, and then we asked AI and it gave it to us. But we were talking about the whole human in the loop and AI predicting injuries and outcomes to games. And okay, so this particular player, maybe they're not performing to their usual statistical level, at the end of the first quarter or something like that. And then I said to Glenn, I'm like, well, but you have to have human in the loop, because you don't know if it's the locker room that they're not responding in the locker room, or someone's dog died the night before, or whatever it might be that's actually affecting their performance. But Glenn, obviously all in on AI, is like, well, there could be cameras in the locker rooms. There's ways to detect in the future, even like very, very quickly in the near future, every single element of what's happening in sport. Now, again, that's coming down to the ethical side potentially. Like, are they going to allow cameras in there? Are they going to, like, if you've got facial recognition and all that sort of stuff now, there will be ways, more than likely, for us to really predict just the players walking into the stadium, if they're up and about or if they're not, and how is that going to affect the outcome of the game, which could then be led back to sports betting and everything else as well. So who knows where it's going to go.
Very interesting. Alex?
Yeah, I think that brings a nice segue into a point I've got on this one, and that's sort of where AI is coming in more just into general life, right? So I don't know if anyone who here is a massive Japanese baseball fan. All right, sweet. I'm not by myself. Good. Were you following the Yomiuri Giants recently? Their manager, Abe, right? He just got himself sacked because there was a domestic at home with his 18-year-old daughter and her sister. They were having a little bit of a fight. He got involved and pulled her out of that fight. She's then gone off into her room, had a bit of a sulk, had a chat to her mate, ChatGPT, who said, "You've just been abused. You need to tell someone. You need to report this." And so she did, thinking, "Oh, whatever, I've blown off a bit of steam, no worries." And reporting that had gone through to the police. She's gone, "Oh, you know, it doesn't matter. It's not going to go anywhere." Police rock up. "Hello, sir. What's this abuse case? What's going on?" And that very same day, he steps down as manager of the Giants. Now, this is arguably the biggest baseball side in Japan. Not if you ask me, I'll say it's the Tigers, but that's because I've got bias there. But I think you're putting it at the same level of if the manager, main scout, whatever, of the New York Yankees is getting himself sacked because you've got this interference from Gen AI, and we're absolutely looking at it being an ethical case. The daughter then came out afterwards and said, "Look, I didn't realise it was going to lead to anything." She published a letter that said, "I'm sorry, this wasn't meant to be a big deal. Nothing really happened. It was just a small, isolated domestic incident at home that I happened to dob to ChatGPT about." But we're seeing that that's got massive ramifications there, right? For not only the manager himself, who has done fairly well, and he's a legend of the club as well, like countless awards, absolute legend status, and has had to stand down because you're getting embroiled in this ethical issue. So I think AI is much bigger than sport. Of course, where we're getting the touch points into sport is a big deal, and there's ethical issues itself into how it's used, and we've got more Spygate and stuff like that coming up. So in the lead up to who's spying on who and taking videos of whomever ahead of playoff games in English football, those are the isolated cases where we can see there's clearly AI that's trying to be used for cheating, but it's the wider ramifications where we don't realise it has ethical implications to our daily life that can then creep in. So scary stuff.
Very, very interesting. Joel and Glenn, is AI going to fast track or stifle sports innovation and sports startups?
I'll go first. Look, as I said before, the rate at which these models and the chips that are powering them are accelerating, it's only going to speed things up. Like we're at the point now, as Joel touched on before, you can spin up a product MVP in literally a day, like start to end, fully secure, authenticated, like the whole shooting match. Like the rate at which you can get to market is just, it was months before. That's been collapsed to a day, essentially, if you know what you're doing. And then from there, I think the biggest challenge is
and you can fail fast and then go again in a very short time frame, probably.
Or build 4 or 5 concurrently and see which one works.
Yeah.
But the real challenge is probably more in the compliance side, because it's all good to throw a bit of slop out there, AI slop as they call it, but is a larger organisation actually going to trust what you put out there, trust that it's safe, secure, trust that it's not going to fall over under load? Like those are the types of challenges. But like in terms of compressing like the ideation and iteration phase, like it's night and day.
Yeah, I was just going to go further on what you were saying there, Glenn, about the trust side, because the amount of startups that could, be born into sports tech instantly is astronomical because of AI. But when we're, as I mentioned before, we're going through our Series A, so in a standard Series A deck, you have to talk about your moat, and a big part of our moat is the trust and the domain knowledge that we have in the space. And it goes back to an NFL or basically any enterprise mid-market company. They're not going to spin up a any sort of touch point with their biggest and most important commodity, their fans, over the weekend and put that live to thousands or millions of people, in case for all the reasons it does break, or the data gets sort of compromised or something like that, right? So that's what we're sort of leaning on as in our business. It's, yes, you can spin up a competition and a website and something to engage with in minutes, which you can do on our platform as well, but you don't have the infrastructure and the trust to actually support it, which at least for the foreseeable future, that's the one thing that we think we can sort of lean on to protect our business from getting chewed up by some guy in his back room spinning up an engagement platform over a weekend.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Happy to open the floor. I'm sure there's plenty of questions on people's minds. Someone put their hand up and go for their life. Yes. Thanks, Martin.
I was just thinking about how predictability is now coming into the discussion around sport, which ultimately I think fans would argue is the number one reason for engagement, is not knowing what the outcome is going to be. So how do you guys envision that value is going to be maintained with fans ongoing if AI becomes even a bigger part of not just fan engagement, but how sport's managed, delivered, watched? If we all know what's going to be who's going to win the World Cup, why would we bother watching?
Yeah, I'll go there. And the reason I'll go there is, listen, I've spent 25 years trying to predict injuries. And as much as we make a lot of promises, Andrew's laughing and staring at me. The fact of the matter is, we know just enough to mess up. And I have an operative word in mess up that's a lot stronger, and that's how I feel about it. And for as much as we think we're getting closer, at the same time, we're probably getting further away. Because we don't know what signals we need to pay attention to and what signals we need to ignore. So it is a very different statement to being able to predict the next 8 seconds to how those 8 seconds culminate for the prediction of an outcome. No one can predict VAR goes out at any moment, or that your best coach ever in a club's history has something random that occurs that has nothing to do with your predictive. And that is the nature of being human, is we are just immensely unpredictable, which is a curiosity that there's 8 billion of us with that, because we should have Darwin theoried our way through. So I'm really confident, despite the escalation, that we actually just don't know how much we don't know. And that's why we're so certain we think we're close.
And I think the great thing about sport and live events and experiences, and why there's so much money and everything being put behind these industries now, is because of that, is because it's so human-led, it's physical, it's not online, and that obviously COVID has a lot to do with that sort of with that stuff as well. But I think the sport of sport and the unpredictability of it, and yes, there are certain things like Glenn was touching on the 8-second thing, but I think I think there's too much unpredictability and too much human in the loop to have it to be a real concern, I would say, going forward.
It's a very good question. I think the other thing sport does really well that we kind of take for granted is innovate. But it's even in terms like pickleball. 10 years ago, who the hell knew what pickleball was, right? Now you've got celebrities running around chucking millions of dollars into the thing. So when you get sport that becomes mainstream, it becomes predictable, becomes stale, that sport will eventually cycle down and re-innovate itself and find some way to get interest again. But it's those other sports that will come out of left field, and then suddenly that's where our interest will go. So it does have the risk of making things a little bit boring for one sport, but that's always like nature of competitive sport, right? We're always going to try and get one over another rival. So it's always an opportunity for someone else to do something better or different. I think as well, there probably tends to be a little bit of fatigue that comes when people just get sick of hearing about AI or predictability or whatever else. And it'll eventually, I think, find its niche where it's used well. And without being too cynical, I think that's probably really in predictive markets. But that also gets old if, I was going to say if you win all the time, but it doesn't, because then you end up rich. But actually it doesn't, because if that's everyone's experience, you won't end up rich. So it's in sport's best interest monetarily as well not to really let that happen. So I think trust the people that we've got in there to keep us all employed. That's probably where I see it going.
I mean, I have like a million funny stories that now that the whole thing, you make money through the stories, right? Like that's what we want to know. We want to know the human element. I couldn't even tell you how many ridiculous things happen in what we think is a professional, curated, elite level, gold medal match. The stories we could tell you about the things that just go absolutely wrong after we've spent 4 years dedicated to a single event and a single day. It's just ridiculous, the things that go wrong. That
Yeah,
could
shoe will
have
blow out. You'll
affected-
forget a bat when you walk out,
and
whatever else.
that never makes it. Now we might, because that's the content that people want, and I think that's where AI is to curate that content for the types of stories that people want. But I just know that those things will forever happen, which is my cynicism and predictability, because I just know too many things that I can't even tell you that happen behind the scenes, and sometimes I wonder why I do what I do, because at the end of the day, so-and-so decided to ride a bike the whole night to sightsee in Beijing before a major event because they had never been there before. And you think, with all the recovery and everything that we've done, that's what you thought would be a good idea today?
Yeah, and I mean, cheating as well is a thing in sport. Let's not pretend it isn't. So that's a big spanner in the works when you come to predictability, where you 100% know based on the data this is going to happen, and then someone cheats, or there's match fixing, and that's an element that comes into it as well. So
You couldn't let us stay positive?
it
couldn't
is
just be
positive.
a
Match
flat
fixing's
tire?
a great thing for keeping things interesting. It's otherwise useful, but I mean, that's the thing as well. We can't pretend that there aren't those elements that, again, we're trying to train models of predictability based on data that's essentially broken, because we're assuming that sport's clean, and we want sport to be clean. Sport's best when it's clean. We know it isn't. So that's part of that predictability in the model as well.
Very good.
Look, it helps.
You're being
me.
recorded here, Alex.
Works out.
Any other questions? Yes? Martin, just pass the microphone over. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I started working in using machine learning in 2010. So basically, I've been working with Andrew and AIS and so many other big names. We started using computer vision with sports, and at the time in 2010, CNN wasn't there. So as a computer scientist, I've developed lots of whatever you can think of, like all this human movement analysis, all the stuff, the fancy names. The difficulties I found is machine learning and AI can never do the work that a sport scientist or a sport biomechanist can do. Because in computer vision, we supply an image or data. We put like kind of some guidelines based on whatever the computer vision toolbox does, whether like we need like to detect heads and joints and blah, blah, blah. And then we feed this one as key points or some data points in order for the machine learning to do good. We don't know actually what a machine learning model does internally, because it shredded data, it cuts images, and it keeps calculating things. We don't know what feature does it extract from the human image or of the video in order to come up with the results. Where a sport biomechanist or a sports scientist, they have to take medical images, they have to go and like to the actual field in order to assess and do the analysis and come up with some metrics. Over time, with more data and more information, we started to refine. And when CNN came, we started using OpenPose like anybody else, but OpenPose wasn't giving us anything. So we had to work out ways in the computer science and computer vision space and AI to resemble what a sports scientist or a sport biomechanist does. Otherwise, all these products you will see available, and you can just fire one with a couple of prompts with any Gen AI or whatever AI you're using. You can come up with a product in a week. But does it actually predict what a sport scientist expect? From my own analysis and my own penetration tests, so big names in the sports science area, they don't. It's just data being collected, annotated by people who may know a little bit about sport, but they've been told to annotate head, shoulder, knees, and toes, and all this stuff. That's what they do. And then they give the data to the scientists or the engineers in order to develop models, but they don't know. So I can see some improvement, but I would say that data and what features you are trying to extract from this data are actually the two most important things that you need as a sport scientist, as a computer scientist who is aiming to develop a sport tick. That's what I would say. So data actually, and the annotation and the information you need to grab from this data are really, really critical, and the method as well.
Yeah, well, that's the training, isn't it? So, I mean, it's still trained by someone who has to know what they're looking at. So we take for granted something comes out of AI and it's some crazy, robot brain thing that it's spat out. That's the result of a person looking at it and saying, if this comes to me as the robot, this is what I think it should be, and someone's told it what that potential outcome should be in that training. So that's the first point that you're bringing up, that still you need that human brain involved somewhere in that process, right? But it's the same thing like the way our own brains work and what we know. We're just a subject, or we're the outcome of everything that we've learnt and all the interactions that we've had. Some of those are accidents as well. Some of that's, our experience in traveling or doing whatever else, our learning, what we learn professionally, what we learn from our own personal interactions. And that's another thing that AI can't necessarily replicate, that it doesn't know how to learn. We say that it learns, it doesn't. It predicts based on all these different parts that come into it. And it's ultimately people who can genuinely think of something new and come up with something from left field that you wouldn't expect. So I think, I get what you're saying in terms of that predictability coming back. You can't predict for unpredictability, and that's people. People are fantastically unpredictable.
It's going back to Soph's point earlier
exactly
about 25
right.
years of injury
Weird
prediction,
stories.
and you don't quite get there.
I've been told, sorry, the accuracy isn't there. But I mean, we're ahead of so many other things that are currently published by big names. But sports scientists and like Andrew, for example, he's a lead sports scientist with AIS. He knows what it requires, and I think Professor Sophie knows what I'm talking about. So it's good, but it's not good enough in order to assess like a sport, like a elite athlete.
Very good. Thank you. Got time for one more question. Yeah, Keanu.
So computers have been beating chess grandmasters for decades now. We've been seeing AI beating Dota 2 players, and many other video games are becoming dominated by AI. How much resource in the sporting industry do you see being put towards strategizing? And how long do you think it is before World Cup finals won by an AI coach?
It's a good question. Yeah, look, as I touched on it earlier, I think around December 2025, so we're talking 6 months ago, there was a critical inflection point, particularly in software engineering, where the models moved from useful to they can pretty much do everything they need to do. And since then, the rate of improvement has been dramatic. Like that, basically within a 1 month period, all of software engineering was changed forever, just as a consequence of those models continuing to scale up. Like we started in the billions of parameters, and then the hundreds of billions of parameters, and that's like, you think of that as like the complexity of the model. Now we're in the trillions of parameters. 1.5 trillion parameters is starting to kind of be around the bleeding edge in terms of usefulness, but the rate at which we're only 6 months in, and everything's already changed in a pretty critical industry that powers a lot of intelligence across the world, from flying planes to everything else in between. I think before the next World Cup comes out, we'll be in a very different place, and you'd almost be negligent if you're not trying to take advantage of everything that's put in front of you. Now, whether the governing bodies start to put some controls in place in terms of not losing some of that human element, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's things are moving very quickly.
I'm going to be controversial on the other end. Is when we review what coaches get taught and expert coaches, like 95% of their training is around tactics. It is about tactics. These people are tactical experts already. I think it's better for the visualization of what tactics look like to the consumer. So if you've seen some of the social networking maps that enable you to see when someone holds position, defensive position, and it's a work of art, it's beautiful. And it's something, if you're not an expert in tactics, you probably couldn't see before. So a naive person can see something that an elite coach has already been able to see. But I think the thing that's always recognized is that we don't, I'm not saying tactics can lose you the game, but what we love about sport is it is getting people to do those tactics, but also the motivation, and it's always the other things that we seem to not even teach people for whatever reason in coach education, and it's social skills around the motivation, the care, that seems to be the stories we love to listen to, but we love to listen to them because we know they matter. We wouldn't love to listen to them if we didn't think they mattered. And so while I agree we'll see lots of it and there'll be people to using it, I refuse to think that that's the differentiator between who wins and loses.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's that saying, is it a champion team will always beat a team of champions. So, and it's up to the coach to actually bring that team together and get them up, and they're down by 6 goals at half time and all that sort of stuff. AI is not going to be able to step in and do that type of thing. So I think no matter what, the head coach is always going to be the head coach and be doing that for those reasons. He's going to be supported, like they already are, by technology to help them make better decisions, but I always think the head coach is going to be the one leading that team and motivating. I think the motivational side is something that AI or a robot's not going to be doing in the near future or at all.
Avatar can't motivate. An avatar can't motivate.
You can
a team.
try.
We might have to leave it there, Alex.
Just
Sorry,
a quick one,
okay.
just because
Yep.
with the AI angle with esports and stuff like that, right? So I just wanted to leave it on. I've been getting my butt kicked by AI-generated managers for years on Football Manager, so we're already there. Don't worry about it. I just think to go forward on some of the other points that were there, it is the human element, I think, where we're seeing AI currently beating players in games. I think they tend to be quite closed kind of games, got very strict sets of rules. I mean, even with Deep Blue, right, it's a matter of processing what your possible moves. There's a limited possible amount of moves, even though it's massive number. As the game continues on, it's the same with esport. Because it's within an infrastructure, it's controlled, there's limited possible moves or inputs that you can have. Whereas I think sport, when you're out running around and an ACL can go or anything else, you can trip over, your shoe can explode, the ball can deflate. Yeah, all those elements I think just might not quite be there, but yeah, AI's been kicking my butt for a while.
Awesome. Great session, great panel, guys. Thank you for your expertise. Really appreciate it. Joel, I'll leave you up on stage quickly.
All by yourself.
Andrew and Bhavesh, do you want to come up? So just to round off the evening for 10 minutes or so, just to share with you some of the sports tech stories that are happening locally here in Perth. And I'll probably just continue with you, Joel. Just tell us where Como's at. You're undertaking international expansion. You're raising money. Probably share with some of the clients you're working with. It's a great story that you're working on. So well done to yourself and Glenn. And it's a real success story of Perth in the sports tech industry.
Yeah, thank you. Still on? So we're actually the inaugural, someone mentioned Plus 8 before, so we were the first company to go through that Plus 8 program 8 years ago, however long it's been running, the first year. So we founded the company 11 years ago. We've been through all sorts of iterations over that time. So if anyone's in a startup right now, the key is just stay alive as long as you possibly can until you find that product market fit, and if you stay alive, there's always an opportunity and always a chance, which we have done. And it's been the last couple of years where we've really found our product market fit, and all the tailwinds from the industry have really caught up to where we think we were with the platform that we've now built. which is an engagement infrastructure and engagement engine. And the mission of the Como of our business is to power the engagement infrastructure for the world's most valuable digital ecosystems. We work a lot in sport, but events, entertainment, shopping, retail, hospitality, QSRs. It's basically any business that is needing to connect, engage, retain, and drive commercial value out of a end consumer, a fan, a customer. So, yeah, last couple of years, inflection point over the last 12 months. We've been working in the US now for a couple of years now. We have clients like the NFL. We've run fan engagement for them at the Super Bowl and all their international events for the last couple of years, which is, they're not our biggest clients, but it's the biggest claim to fame, I guess, when you can say you're doing fan engagement at the Super Bowl. It's pretty cool. But then if we just talk about sport, in Australia, the NRL, Hockey Australia, Hockey One, we just signed Rugby Australia, New Zealand Rugby, the All Blacks, of the Pro Paddle League in the US.
Fanatics, you work with
Fanatics, and then into sponsors of sport, which is a big one as well, helping them drive value and revenue out of their sponsorship and making that more measurable for them. So things like QBE, Bunnings, Virgin Australia, and yeah, so we're out raising capital right now, which is a difficult time in itself. It's not what it was 5 or so years ago when you can just go out and spend as much money as you can to grow as quickly as you can. Everyone wants you to be growing as quickly as everyone once was, but cash flow positive at the same time. So trying to do that, keep momentum, raise capital with a small team is tough, and then also trying to grow internationally and everything else. So one of my favourite sayings, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And I know why not many people are doing it, because it's not easy, and sleepless nights. And I think the other key is you need to build a team of people that actually truly believe in where you're going, what you're doing, and they're on that mission with you. Over the years, we've been through not a lot of team members, but it's the higher slow fire fast is probably again something. If I was to throw something out there for you to take away, is you really just want to hold on to those people that are on that journey with you, and as quickly as possible remove the ones that are not, because your time is limited and you need to make the most of it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Joel. Well done. Bhavesh, I think we met you when we first came over here 3 years ago, and you're developing a body scanning solution, and in the last 6 months, you've been nominated for some awards, and you've developed some really important partnerships to really explain where you're at with 3D Measure Me.
Thanks, Craig. So for people who don't know, 3D Measure Me, it is, as Craig said, just a body scanning app. But what it is we just make progress visible in terms that people understand. So seeing an actual avatar of yourself with your real body shape, seeing your waist measurement, in centimeters, and knowing that, oh yeah, I've lost 5 centimeters. That's a dress size. That's a trouser size. It's just that easily understandable part that people are kind of connecting with and relating to. So more recently, we did our full launch actually last year, and we had a little bit of uptake in that, and we've been trying to push it through the platforms and that. At the end of last year, we got we got awarded a startup to watch by Athletech News in the US, and then last month they actually nominated us as one of the most innovative health and fitness companies in tech. They put us on their list for that in the US as well, which was kind of exciting. But we've also been finalists in a few other awards and that. But what we found is that we're actually working a lot with, or changing the Australian fitness industry, especially for that general population fitness, has been extremely tough. They're very stuck in their ways. They're very slow to move on any new technologies or anything like that. But what we've done is we've decided that, okay, we'll go through the grassroots. So we're actually partnering with like the personal training RTOs. So when they're coming out of college, they're already trained, they're using the app, and then we'll let that filter up. So we've partnered with organizations like the AFA, North Metro TAFE. We've got a few others which are already in the pipeline as well. We've also found, we were talking about AI earlier. So one of the things that we did have was a lot of our measurements we had in there, but people actually wanted to know, well, how do I actually change that and improve that? And we're initially thinking, well, we'll use AI. That can give them programs, that can give them nutrition, that can give them all that sort of information. But as we started speaking to the people, they actually came back and said, that's not actually what they want. They actually want that human connection. They want to be going to see a PT. They want to have that connection with the nutritionist. The nutritionist or the PT can use the AI to help them build the program, but they want that individual connection. So what we've done is we've actually changed tack, and we're actually partnering with those organizations in our app. And we actually list them as partners, and that's localized to your area, so people can actually now go through and, I need help, I want to change my measurements. They can just click on the link and it'll go directly to whoever's directly in their area. We do have a global partner as well, which hasn't officially been announced on socials or anything like that yet, but we have partnered with Precision Health Alliance. So both businesses can can work with them as well as individuals, but get that full-on nutrition advice or exercise advice that they want, and that's actually they deal in precision health, and that's medically trained as well. So their claim is that they're the world leading expert, but that's based on the east coast of Australia, and we're working with them as well, so to get that out there. We've also just recently started, or we're just planning to launch our events, with our first one going to be a female empowerment event where it's females who want to have it all, and we're going to help them with the tools for the nutrition, exercise, their coaching, helping to build it into their lifestyle, as well as using the app to actually help track it and get that happening. My wife's going to be running that, and that's going to be starting August, I think, is the first one, and then from there we'll be using that to expand across other categories as well in there. So there's a lot happening.
Awesome, great stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Bhavesh. Good stuff. And Andrew, a couple of co-founders, track and field athletes. They've hit a sweet spot called, what are we calling it? Centralized nervous system measurement.
Yeah.
Explain what this wearable is and what you're trying to measure and how that would impact the athlete.
Yeah, of course. So I'm from Bolt. We are a wearable specifically for explosive athletes. Looking at that science behind the central nervous system, where most wearables on the market at the moment look at the cardiovascular system to measure strain and whatnot. We're definitely looking at the nervous system and looking at the neural impact of exercise on the body. So yeah, Grant and I, we come from a background of track and field. We've worn a heap of wearables ourselves, and we've gone, none of this data reflects how we feel at the end of a session. Me personally, 400 meter runner, go out and I run 300 meters, full blast, 4-minute recovery, absolutely knackered for the next day or two after. But my watch, which I've left in the car to wear a nice timepiece instead, reflects that it's only going to take me 3 hours before I'm fully recovered. Simply not the case. And then that's where we've developed this technology instead. So Grant was an international jumper. He represented Australia in high jump at some World University Championships before going to America and going to college over there. And we are in the MVP stage at the moment. We are currently beta testing our algorithms with some professional teams here in Perth, as well as our network of Olympic track and field athletes that we've built through our connections in the sport.
Awesome. Great stuff, guys. Thank you for sharing your experiences in your journey so far. So thank you. I'm keen for a wine, so I think we'll finish it there. Thank you for joining us. Hope you got a lot out of the Sport and AI session and hearing some of the stories that are happening right here in Perth in sports tech. So thank you, Mesh Points. Brittany, thank you. Soph and Alex, really appreciate this wonderful venue catering tonight. So thank you, everyone over there. So have a great evening, safe travels, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.
Just because we're after hours, for those of you that want to exit, I just have to kind of take you out. So I'll take a group down now, and I'll come back up for those of you that are going to stay. So if you need to leave now, I'll just take a group down, exit you out, and then I'll come back up and we can exit in groups. Oh, perfect.